Imagine vanishing without a trace, only to reappear years later, leaving everyone stunned and without answers. These are the stories of people who defied the impossible. Join us as we dive into these mind-bending disappearances. Mary Day. Born in 1968 in Little Falls, New York, Mary Louise Day was the eldest of 3 siblings in the Day family. Her childhood, however, was far from ideal. Her mother, Charlotte, struggled to care for her children, which led to Mary and her sisters spending much of their early years bouncing between foster homes. Eventually, Mary's parents divorced, and Charlotte married William Hull, a soldier in the Army. With William, Charlotte had 2 more children, and she gained full custody of Mary and her sister Kathy, while their youngest sister, Cher, remained with her foster family and was eventually adopted. In 1978, the family relocated to Hawaii due to William's job. Tragically, shortly after this move, Mary's biological father, Charles, passed away in an accident. His daughters inherited a sum of money from him, which the family codenamed Mohawk. However, by 1980, Mary's life took a dark turn. At just 12 years old, she was removed from her mother's custody due to abuse from William. While the family then moved to Seaside, California, Mary initially stayed in Hawaii, but eventually returned to live with her mother and stepfather. She was last seen on July 15, 1981. Surprisingly, Charlotte and William never reported Mary missing. According to CBS, the night Mary vanished, William allegedly attacked her after accusing her of poisoning his dog, who was ill at the time. The following morning, Mary was gone. When her sister Kathy inquired, Charlotte told her that Mary had simply run away and warned her never to bring it up again. For years, this remained the official story, despite the peculiar absence of any missing persons report. In 1994, over a decade after Mary had disappeared, Cher filed a missing persons report. She later told 48 Hours that her mother had always repeated the story of Mary running away, even implying Mary was involved in drugs and sex work. Adding to the oddity, Charlotte had reportedly burned all of Mary's photos. Kathy remembered being forbidden from approaching a specific corner of their yard while playing, which investigators later searched, guided by cadaver dogs that detected the scent of human remains. Though no body was found, a child's shoe was unearthed. Suspicion grew that Mary's body may have been moved when the family relocated from Seaside to Fort Ord. Then, in 2005, while authorities were building a case against Charlotte and William, a routine traffic stop changed everything. A vehicle was pulled over with stolen plates, and one of the passengers presented an Arizona state ID identifying her as Mary Day, with Mary's birth date and other details matching. She claimed she had run away to escape the abuse, but her southern accent raised doubts among investigators, as did the fact that her ID had been issued only 3 weeks before she was found. Nonetheless, a DNA test confirmed she was indeed Charlotte's biological daughter. Despite these results, some family members remained skeptical due to her accent, and even noted that she received mail under the name Monica Deo. Years later, in 2017, Mary disclosed to a reporter that she had been taken in by a woman named Marie Kimmel shortly after fleeing home, and had stayed with her for about a year. Marie's family even provided a photograph of Mary from 1982, proving she had been alive after her supposed disappearance. With these findings, investigators closed the case. Mary passed away shortly after in 2017, leaving behind one of the strangest mysteries. Vasile Goros. In 1991, Vasile Goros, a 63-year-old cattle farmer in eastern Romania, vanished on what should have been a routine trip. Vasile, who regularly traveled for business, had purchased his train ticket as usual and left his home. His family expected him back as they always did, but this time he never returned. Authorities were alerted, yet no clues were found. Over the years, his family held memorial services and gradually accepted that he had likely met a tragic fate. But in a bewildering twist, on August 29, 2021, 30 years after he had disappeared, a car pulled up outside his family's home, and out stepped Vasile. Now 93, he was dressed in the same clothes he had worn the day he vanished, with his original train ticket and ID still in his pockets. Strangely, he hadn't been the one driving, and the vehicle sped off before anyone could question the driver or take note of the license plate. In the years leading up to his return, Vasile's family had all but given up hope of ever finding him. Despite exhaustive searches and appeals to local authorities, not a single lead surfaced. It was as if he'd been swallowed by the earth itself. Then, on that August evening, Vasile's reappearance was nothing short of surreal. Though decades had passed, he looked remarkably healthy and was coherent, albeit somewhat disoriented. The most striking aspect was his attire. He was wearing the exact same outfit he'd been in the day he vanished, and remarkably, the clothes showed no significant signs of wear or age. His belongings, too, were preserved as though they hadn't aged a day. But the mystery didn't end there. When his family and neighbors tried to question him about where he'd been, Vasile appeared genuinely puzzled. He had no recollection of the intervening years, or of anything that might explain his sudden reappearance. He didn't seem to recognize how much time had passed, as though for him, it had been a seamless continuation from that fateful day in 1991. Even more bizarre was the car that dropped him off, a vehicle no one recognized in the small town, and which sped away so quickly that no witnesses could identify the driver or license plate. As word of Vasile's mysterious return spread, locals and media alike began to speculate. Had he been taken somewhere, held in some unknown location, only to be released as if no time had passed? Or, more outlandishly, had he somehow slipped through time? To this day, Vasile's case baffles both his family and investigators, leaving behind a haunting series of questions. Who brought him home, and why after all these years? Where had he been, and how had he returned in such an inexplicable condition? Vasile's story remains one of Romania's most mystifying modern-day disappearances, with no answers, only eerie echoes of the unknown. Gabriel Nagi. The final case in our trio of mysterious reappearances involves Gabriel Nagi, a father and student in Sydney, Australia, who vanished on January 21, 1987. Gabriel, who was studying accounting at night and working by day, had two young children at the time, 9-year-old Jennifer and 11-year-old Stephen. The day he disappeared, he had contacted his wife to let her know he'd be coming home soon. But when he failed to return, a police search was launched, and his burned-out car was found days later, adding to the concern. For years, Gabriel's case went cold. The family moved on as best they could, holding on to memories but accepting that Gabriel might never return. But in 2010, more than 2 decades later, a police officer revisited his case and noticed an unusual detail. Gabriel's Medicare card had been used in a remote town. Tracking him down, authorities discovered that Gabriel had been living under a new name, working odd jobs, and had little memory of his former life. After tracking him down, authorities discovered that Gabriel had been living in a remote town under a completely different identity. He had no bank accounts, no close friends, and worked only cash-in-hand jobs to maintain his low profile. When questioned by police, Gabriel was cooperative, yet appeared confused about his past, struggling to recognize familiar names or faces. Friends and acquaintances in the town described him as polite and quiet, though often distant, as if he were carrying some unspoken burden. It soon became apparent that Gabriel's amnesia wasn't complete. Occasionally, he recalled snippets of his former life, fleeting memories of his childhood home, moments spent with family, even old family traditions. However, these recollections seemed fragmented, almost like dreams that faded whenever he tried to focus on them. In his belongings, investigators found a few personal items that hinted at his former life, including a tattered photograph and a worn-out key that matched the locks in his childhood home. However, no documents or identifying information from before his disappearance were found. His family was informed of his whereabouts, and they were overwhelmed with a mix of relief, disbelief, and a lingering sadness over the years they'd lost. When Gabriel finally reunited with his family, he seemed moved, but also distant, as though he was meeting them for the first time. The case raised questions that no one could answer. Where had Gabriel been all those years, and what could have caused such a profound loss of memory? Some speculated he had been through a traumatic event that had erased parts of his past. Others thought he might have chosen this life to escape something unknown. To this day, Gabriel's case remains an unsettling example of how fragile memory can be, leaving open the haunting possibility of a life half remembered and half forgotten. Gabriel's story, like those of Vasile and so many others, remains shrouded in mystery, leaving us with more questions than answers. Each case challenges our understanding of time, memory, and the forces that shape our lives. Where did they go? What forces brought them back? If you've enjoyed uncovering these strange stories, let us know your theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our channel for more mind-bending mysteries like these.